justice system isn't looking out for us. This verdict has set us back in this country, and that's why we're all out here today.
Soon, hundreds of people were marching north to Times Square, taking over city streets and bringing traffic to a standstill. Many believe it was a clear case of racial profiling that led to Trayvon Martin's death, and say the justice system failed.
If the roles were reversed, that man wouldn't have got off.
As protesters took to the street, politicians took to the airwaves.
The fact is that we have the best judicial system in the world, and we respect it.
If the rule is that you've got to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, there were plenty of reasonable doubts there.
It was a devastating verdict.
I worry about all those young black kids out there that see a system of justice that maybe doesn't respond to them.
This is just the latest in the ongoing national debate over the circumstances in Trayvon Martin's death. Protest organizers say they're planning more action in the coming weeks.
The NYPD says that there were only minor arrests, but the protesters say this is far from over. In fact, there's another rally scheduled for this evening in the Bronx. Charlie, Nora?
Don Dela, thanks. President Obama is calling for calm. In a statement released yesterday, the president said, quote, "I know this case has elicited strong passions, and in the wake of the verdict, I know those passions may be running even higher. But we are a nation of laws, and a jury has spoken."
George Zimmerman faces a new set of problems as he moves on to the next chapter of his life. The case first received national attention when Mark Strassman reported it right here on CBS This Morning in March of last year. He joins us now from Sanford, Florida. Mark, good morning.
Good morning, Nora. And ever since we first talked about George Zimmerman, there have been all sorts of perceptions of him, from that of a vigilante to a victim who stood his ground. But with his verdict now behind him, he's eager to step back into the world, but not everyone's eager to have it back. Zimmerman has his freedom back. His GPS ankle monitor is off. He can travel abroad and live anywhere in America. But he will never get back the life he led before he killed Trayvon Martin.
I'm sure that if he could wave his magic wand, he would just sort of get his life back.
Attorney Mark O'Mara defended Zimmerman. He says the Crime Watch volunteer will have to look over his shoulder for the rest of his life.
He has to be very cautious and protective of his safety, because there is still a fringe element who have said, at least in tweets and everything else, that they want revenge.
With his not guilty verdict, Zimmerman is now eligible to carry a concealed weapon again. But to his critics, Zimmerman's name has become a racial flashpoint.
It boils down to is you got a 17-year-old kid who is minding his own business, wearing a hoodie, and gets accosted, gets followed by an individual who wants to be a cop.
The Department of Justice has said it will now review the trial records for possible civil rights violations. Zimmerman once dreamt of a career in law enforcement. He could again. But first, he has to live with knowing he shot and killed an unarmed teenager. Lawyer Don West helped defend him.
This is something no one gets over. There's no winners here. There's no monsters here. That's the tragedy.
Now that the verdict is in, the court will release all the case evidence. Charlie and Nora, Zimmerman could reclaim the gun he used to kill Trayvon Martin.
Mark Strassman, thanks. CBS News legal analyst Jack Ford joins us now. Jack, good morning.
Charlie, good morning.
So what's next? What might the Justice Department do?
Well, Justice Department said we're going to take a look at this and decide whether there should be any federal prosecution here. Now, people might say, well, wouldn't that be a violation of double jeopardy to try him again? The answer is not necessarily, because if he was tried again, it wouldn't be for murder and manslaughter. There are certain situations where the same set of facts and circumstances can give rise to different state federal charges. But here's what happens. The Justice Department is always very cautious when there's been a state-level trial. So they will look to see, it's not enough to just
Isn't there
have
a pretty
people,
high standard?
Very high standard. And it's not enough just for people to disagree with the verdict. Historically, what we've seen is this, that the Justice Department will jump in if there was a failure to investigate, a failure to even prosecute, or if there was some fundamental flaw with the first trial. So there's a lot they have to look at, including they look at the first trial and say, Is there any reason for us to believe a second trial would be any different here? So statistically, it's not probable that it would happen. But we've seen in the past, for instance, the Rodney King case. It's certainly possible that the Justice Department can say, we're going to prosecute your civil rights violation attacking Trayvon Martin because he was black.
And don't they have to show or suggest some sort of racial animus?
Yes, exactly. It would be the notion of that George Zimmerman violated Trayvon Wright's civil rights, the right to be safe and not be attacked, because of his race. That's the important part for the federal government to get involved.
So that's one avenue for the Department of Justice. What about the family in a civil rights case?
Yeah, you can see that the family could file a civil case, and probably a good comparison. We were talking about this before the O.J. Simpson trial. O.J. Simpson found not guilty in the criminal case. The family sued him civilly. Civil trials are very different. First of all, you're looking for monetary damages. There's no jail involved. It's the families against each other, essentially. But there are differences. The standard of proof in a civil trial is much, much lower. In a criminal case, it's beyond a reasonable doubt. Civil trial, a mere preponderance of the evidence. And also in a civil trial, they could compel George Zimmerman to testify where he couldn't be compelled to testify in a criminal case.
What kind of second guessing will there be about this trial?
I think there will be a lot. I think people have to realize, though, that, and we've talked about this from the beginning, this was a hard case for the prosecution. It wasn't a slam dunk. But I think you'll see people saying, why didn't you just go with a manslaughter charge to start with? It's an easier case to prove than murder. But the reality is, with trials and verdicts, there's always disagreement. But here, there shouldn't be real surprise.
Jack Ford, thank you. And NSA leaker Edward Snowden has documents, he claims, detailing how the National Security Agency actually works. That's according to his main contact in the press, Guardian columnist Glenn Greenwald. He claims the